Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns, and I am so excited to be here with you today. I know I say that every day, but it's true, and I think every day I get a little bit more excited. I really do mean that. So I hope that you're all having a great day today. I hope that you're making it a great day. Because as we talked about yesterday, and as we talk about frequently in this podcast and on this video channel, you have the power, right? That happiness is something that is coming from within you. It has nothing to do with the circumstances of your day. Of course, the circumstances of your day can cause difficulty. It can cause suffering. It can even cause pain. It can even cause tragedy, and that's not something that we're going to escape, right? It's not something that we're going to avoid. But when we can learn to accept the things that are happening, right? The goods, the stuff that we label as good and the stuff that we label as bad, and then when we can get into the point where we're not labeling things as good or bad and just accepting what is, well, then happiness will arise. I'm going to talk about this extensively in the near future, but I was just thinking earlier this morning while I was in my car that it's like when you think of little kids, right, young children, they're happy until something happens that makes them unhappy, right? And so it's the same thing. Like that never changed, right? When we were children, we didn't grow out of that. All we did was we adopted more and more and more things that can come into our lives and make things more difficult. And kind of my point is that these things that are happening, right, they cover up our happiness, right? We are born happy, and we are born ready to be happy at any given moment. And when we learn to accept those things that might take the happiness away from us, I'm telling you folks, it just arises just out of nowhere for no reason at all, right? Just happiness. Like I find myself sometimes sitting doing absolutely nothing and just I can't help but like giggle because it's just, because there's just everything to be happy for, right? Even though it's nothing, right? Even though there's no reason for it, there's no reason not to either, right? And when you can get to this point of happiness, everything starts to change. It really does, right? All of your relationships are going to be different. All of your spending habits are going to be different. So much of what we spend is emotional spending, right? Even eating, right? Like when we consume things, whether it's going out and buying something that we don't really need or it's eating something that we don't really need to eat, right? We're doing this based on an emotion, right? That our emotion is making us want to do this because we're trying to cover up some level of pain and some level of suffering. But the suffering is an optional thing. And so I hope that you're able to meet this day and everything that arises in this day. I hope you're able to meet it. As we said, the formula is very simple, right? It's presence. It's just paying attention to what's happening as it's happening, being right here, right now, all the time, or as often as is reasonable, and then acceptance, right? Accepting what we find here as it arises. Compassion for others and ourselves, right? This helps us to mitigate the interpersonal dramas that might cause the suffering that we were talking about a moment ago. And then most of all, curiosity, right? Which curiosity does two really important things, right? Curiosity is sort of the antidote for judgment, right? Because when you're curious about something, you're not labeling it as anything, right? You're looking to learn about it. So you don't know yet if it's what you might consider good or you might consider bad, right? And so curiosity helps to mitigate that judgment, but curiosity also helps to do something else that's really important because you see, on the other side of acceptance, there is letting go. Right? And when we say letting go, mostly what we're talking about is letting go of the outcome that we expect, right? Letting go of expectations to begin with, or in general, I should say, right? And so when we can, when we can learn to be curious and therefore not kind of think about what is supposed to happen here, right? Because if we're curious, we're open. And being open means that we're not, focus on a certain outcome or a certain expectation, because that expectation is mostly where the suffering comes from. right? Because we expect one thing to happen, and when that doesn't happen, then we sink into this place of suffering, and then we have a hard time feeling happy, right? So if we can just accept what is happening as it's happening, and we can let go of any kind of expectation that we had, well, then, there's nothing to stop you from being happy. And truly, you will find yourself being happy. And as I say, happy for no reason at all. And I would love that for you. So I hope that you're scratching the surface of that, all of you. I really do. And if you're not, if you're having a hard time grasping what I mean by this, or having a hard time implementing any of this that I'm talking about, I want to hear from you. I really do. I want to hear from you because I can help you. All right. It's not very expensive to work with this particular coach, and it's something that I love to do. So, there's no reason not to reach out and at least ask a couple of questions and see where things go, So, so if you're having any difficulty with being happy, I want to hear from you because it's so much easier than I ever thought it could be. And I would love to show you how easy it can be too. So today, I wanted to follow up, as I usually do, on yesterday's topic. So yesterday we were talking a lot about the present moment. We're talking about how to really, steep ourselves in the present moment. I use that as a kind of a pun because, I talked about, making a cup of tea yesterday. And how that was an example of being present, right? Or how I use making a cup of tea to illustrate how to be present or what being present really means. And so when steeping ourselves in the present moment, right? That's again that first step, right, of being present. Right. And so today I wanted to talk about a particular emotion that we all have sometimes. There's a point in our lives where we're all going to feel this emotion. But this particular emotion and all of the emotions that will kind of rise from this and spring forth from this particular emotion, right, they're going to pull us out of the present moment. And this is important because again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to train ourselves to be in the present moment as much as possible. And so if there's an emotion that's pulling us out of the present moment, then it's very, very valuable to understand that emotion and to work with it. Now, remember, it's never, ever, ever. If you think that I'm saying that you should avoid a given emotion, negative or positive emotion, then I'm sure that I'm either misspeaking and not being clear, or there's something that you're not understanding clearly. Because I'm telling you right here with unequivocally, there is never, ever, ever a time where it is wise to ignore our emotions or to avoid our emotions or to stifle our emotions. Okay, doing those kind of things will lead to bigger and far more, perilous problems than whatever the emotion is representing at the given moment, right? And so what we're not going to do is we're not going to avoid or stifle or block any kind of emotions. But what we're going to do is we're going to work with the emotions. We're going to understand them, right? We're going to bring ourselves to through that same curiosity and the same compassion and the same presence and the same acceptance. We're going to allow the emotion in, right? Allow ourselves to turn towards it and to examine it and see what's really there. And usually when we do that, whatever the emotion is, emotions are always changing anyway, right? Any given emotion that you have lasts about 90 seconds in your body, right? Everything else beyond 90 seconds is our own doing, right? We're either feeding the emotion with thoughts and stories, and we're renewing that 90 seconds over and over and over again, right? And that's how we wind up in these long stretches of feeling a particular emotion. So the emotion that we're talking about here is the granddaddy of all negative emotions. And what I'm talking about is fear. Now, you've heard me say this before. In the vast and very complex spectrum of human emotions, and the emotions are very complex, right? I mean, there's people who study their whole lives, and get many different degrees to understand what's happening in the human emotions, right? So I do not mean to oversimplify it, okay? But there is a simplification that kind of fits, right? Because on the very, very most basic and broad stroke level, the spectrum of human emotions has really one division, right? And on one side of this division is the emotion of fear, okay? And this is the emotion that is pushing us away from things, right? And on the other side of the emotion, of this scale of emotions, the spectrum of emotions, is the emotion of love, which is drawing us towards things. Okay, so fear is pushing us away. Love is drawing us in. Okay, and that really is, now again, there's much more complexity to it, right? Again, there's, huge, degrees that people can get just by studying the emotions of the human body, right? So I'm not, by no means am I trying to oversimplify things, but for the purpose of our conversations here, and for the purpose of understanding, sort of the top level, the way that emotions really impact our lives on a moment to moment basis. That's really all you need to know, right? Is that fear is the root of all negative emotions. Love is the root of all positive emotions. Fear is there to push us away, and love is there to draw us in. Okay, so with that basis of understanding, I want to talk about fear today, but I want to talk really specifically about the difference between fear and what we might call the awareness of danger. Okay, and this is it might seem like a little bit of a, nitpicky semantic kind of difference that I'm talking about, but it's more fundamental than that. I'm going to explain that to you now. Okay, so fear, right, is, again, it's an emotion, right? And so that's something that's first to understand, is that it's emotion, and because it's an emotion, it has a very specific role that it's playing in our lives, right? It is motivating us, right? But again, it is motivating us away from the things that we fear. Okay, but here's the thing, right? Fear is almost always, like 99.9% of the time, fear is going to be concerned about the outcome of some circumstance that we're living in, right? And so what that means is that fear is based on the future. Right? Some people can even feel fear about the past, but again, it's fearing something that's already happened, is the fear of what that happening means to the future. I hope that makes sense to you, right? Because it's different from like post-traumatic stress disorder, right? Which is a processing thing that's happening to your body based on something that was a very fearful experience, right? So fear is kind of, wound up in that a little bit. But again, it's when we're afraid, it's always going to be like, is that thing going to happen to me again in the future? Right? So fear, again, is always, or at least, I'm sure somebody could poke a hole in this and give me one example where fear is not in the future, but I don't know. So I'm willing to say 99.999% of the time, fear is based in the future. Okay? Now, awareness of danger, however, is right now. Right? Awareness of danger is me saying, okay, something is happening in this circumstance, in this experience that I'm having right now. There's something that could harm me. Okay. Now, yeah, I mean, again, it's, sure. Is that fear because, fear in the next moment that something's going to happen? Okay. I'll concede to that. Right. But the difference is, right, that fear is something that's going to impact the way that we kind of, operate based on what we're going to do. Where awareness of danger, again, is a little bit more immediate than that. Let me explain to you exactly what I mean by that. So, fear paralyzes us in the present for fear of something that might happen in the future, right? Whereas awareness of danger is something that we're kind of, dealing with on a moment by moment basis. So let me give you an example, right? So fear says, no, don't go for a walk even though there's a full moon right now, don't go for a walk because there's lots of ice out there and you might get hurt, right? That is fear. That is fear paralyzing me from moving forward, right? Because something might happen out there that could hurt me, right? Awareness of danger, on the other hand, right, says awareness of danger as opposed to fear says, well, it's a beautiful night with a full moon. Sure, there might be some ice out there, so I should be careful, but I would never want to miss this beautiful night to walk around on this full moon. It's gorgeous out. See the difference there, right? So fear keeps us from acting, right? Fear paralyzes us, whereas awareness of danger simply changes the way in which we're going to motivate ourselves forward, right? So again, talking about the icy pavement. I know I covered this a couple of months ago, but this is worth repeating, right? That when we're aware of danger, like an icy pavement, right, an icy walkway, right, when we're aware of that, we can alter the way that we go, the way that we move across that ice, right? So, for instance, one of the great, tactics for doing this is to walk like a penguin, right? Where you kind of shift your weight forward a little bit so you're nice and really over your feet, and you take very short steps. You kind of waddle a little bit. Don't pick your feet up, just slide them across and stay stable, right? And if you do this, you'll be safe. You will survive this danger. Now, fear, on the other hand, right? Fear is saying, if I fall, I'm going to break my arm. And if I break my arm, I'm not going to be able to work. And if I can't work, I'm going to not be able to pay my rent. And if I can't pay my rent, I'm going to be thrown out on the street. And if I'm thrown out on the street, I'll be homeless forever and I'll die. See the difference there? Fear, in that sense, fear wants us to keep coming into the future, because that's what, and again, it's not something that is a fault, right? Like this is an important thing, right? Because there are situations that could be very dangerous, right? In which we don't want to, risk, right? Like we want to keep ourselves safe. So I say awareness of danger versus fear, but if there's like a tiger out there, well, that's not just walking on icy pavement, right? Like there could be, or for instance, like fear might say, don't go for a drive, like don't use a car because there's so many chances of getting hurt out there, right? Whereas awareness of danger is, we'll buckle our seatbelt. We'll drive a car with a safety bag on it, and I will be careful the way that I drive my car. See the difference there? So the thing is, right, of course we want to not, necessarily live in fear, right? Because we miss a lot that happens, right? If we're so afraid, there are ways in which your mind can create the stories. I know I kind of digress there. I apologize. But there's ways in which your mind will create stories to bring that awareness of danger, right? So fear can transform into that awareness of danger, right? As long as we're grounded in the present moment, right? That's the big difference, right? And so because our mind has this way of kind of going with it, right? And kind of telling these stories and projecting further and further outward for all kinds of different, examples and scenarios and different ways in which this thing might hurt us, this thing that we're fearing, right? And so fear, in a way, keeps pulling us out of the present moment, where awareness of danger keeps bringing us back to the present moment, right? Because again, in my scenario about walking on an icy pavement, right, that if you're aware of the danger of falling, yeah, fear is helpful, right? Fear is what tells you that if I fall, it's not without consequences, right? If I fall, I could break my arm, and that would cause all kinds of other, problems in my life. But if I start thinking about all those problems, then guess what? Now I'm not paying attention to how I'm walking, and now I'm not walking like a penguin anymore. And you know what? This might actually become like a self-fulfilling prophecy in which I fall and break my arm because I was thinking about falling and breaking my arm and not being careful about what I was doing. Right? So awareness of danger, again, brings us back to the present moment, because you have to be paying attention to what you're doing so that you will stay safe from the danger of which you are aware. Okay, so that's how it works when you're walking across an icy pavement, right? But the thing about fear, right, is that, we have this tendency to operate from a place of fear, right? Where fear kind of, is the motivating, force in our mind, which means that our motivating force is going to be one of repelling and paralysis and inertia. Right. And that's not really a way to live. Right. I mean, there's lots of things to be afraid of in the world, but there's also lots of reasons not to be afraid. And so many of us will operate from this place of fear, right, in which we're again, not going for that moonlight walk because it's, because there might be some kind of danger out there. And I don't want to break my arm because I got to work, because I got to afford the bills. I don't want to get thrown out of my house. I got to feed my kids, all that stuff, right? But again, when we're working, when we're operating from that fear in our lives, what it means is that we don't take chances on things. We always play it safe. We always, we're more conservative in our actions. Right? We're not likely to do X, Y, or Z, right? We're more likely to stay inside and do nothing, right? Because we're afraid, right? And so the thing is that, when we operate from fear, right, what we're doing is we're sacrificing the positive potential. Right, we're assuming the worst case scenario, so we're literally taking away the potential of a positive experience. Right, a beautiful night walk with the moon and the ice and everything else can be a very beautiful, transformative experience. But we don't do that because of the fear. Right, if we're operating from the fear. Right, whereas if we're operating from a place of love, in which the awareness of danger doesn't change that love. Right. In fact, in a loving relationship, a lot of times we are aware that there is danger here. Right. I'm opening my heart here. I could get hurt, but it doesn't stop us from doing it. Right. Like if we're operating from fear in all of our personal relationships, then we wouldn't have any personal relationships, because we have to be vulnerable in a personal relationship. Right. And so we do that in spite of the danger that a relationship poses, because we can get very truly and seriously hurt by a relationship as we expose ourselves and make ourselves vulnerable that way. But if we're not willing to take that step, then, again, we'll never know love with another person. And of course, that's eliminating a really, really big and really special sort of ingredient and aspect of life. So you see, it takes away the positive potential. Right, whether it's a walk out on a moonlit night in the wintertime in Colorado, or it's entering into what could be the most amazing, loving relationship in your life. Right, so what do you do then? Right, like how do we deal with this? Right, well, what we can do is we can transform the fear. Right, so when you feel fear in your body, and also let's just go back to the basics, right, and back to square one, kind of, in that fear, right, the minute your brain, the specific part of your brain called the amygdala, the minute that little almond shaped and sized node in your brain senses that you are afraid of something, right, it goes into the stress response. Now, that's also different from the awareness of danger, right? I don't want to get too far into that, because that gets into some pretty heavy neurological, neuroscience kind of stuff. So let's kind of just leave that off there, and we can talk about that another time. If you want to get into a conversation with that, you can come and call me, and we can talk and nerd out on that all we want. But for the for the sake of this conversation, right, we can we can transform this fear, right? So when we sense fear, when you sense fear, when you realize that you are, feeling or well, let me rephrase this, okay? Because here's the thing, right? Is that the feeling in your body that you feel when you are experiencing anxiety is literally no different at all from the feeling in your body when you feel excitement, right? And both are going to have stress, right? Both are going to be the stress response. But here's the key difference between them, right? That anxiety includes the emotion of fear. And the emotion of fear, I don't know if you remember this, but the emotions do not exist on their own. The emotions, nor the thoughts, nor the sensations of their body, none of these three things exist on their own. They all exist as part of a never-ending cycle. So, when you feel fear in your mind, right, your thought and the sensations of your body are all going to push you to be more afraid, right? So when you're feeling anxiety, right, it's very likely that you'll think of, well, what if this goes wrong? And then you'll think, but what if that also goes wrong? And then what if these other things go wrong? And on and on and on. You remember, just as I talked about with the, walking across a sidewalk with ice on it, right? Like I took you in like 3 or 4 seconds, I took you from, oh, I might fall on the ice to, I'm going to be homeless in a few months, right? Because I broke my arm. I can't work. If I can't work, I can't make money. If I can't make money, I can't pay the bills. If I can't pay the bills, I get, thrown out of my house, and then I'm living on the street in the middle of winter, and this icy pavement is the least of my problems, right? So that's how the mind works, right? And it does so very efficiently and very quickly. So the objective then is that when we're feeling that, when you're feeling that feeling in your body, right, check in, that feeling of excitement, right? Because the excitement and the anxiety are no different from one another as you feel them in your body. So what you can do, though, is you can check in with your emotions. And do I feel afraid? Well, if I do, then it's anxiety. And so what do you do then, right? How do you transform the fear, right, to bring anxiety to excitement? And I'm going to tell you that, right? Because before I go into that, though, as I said, both these things are stress, right? One is distress, the other is eustress, which is the positive end of stress, right? That's excitement, that's the adrenaline rush, that's like, yeah, let's go get it, right? The difference is, right, again, that the thought pattern, right, every time you have one of those thoughts about that could go wrong, that could go wrong, that could go wrong, well, then what your body is doing is it's manufacturing the stress response, right? And it's going over and over and over, and it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger, right? When you're on a roller coaster, right, you're just excited when the thing's going. When you come off the roller coaster, oh, okay, now it's done. I'm back to normal, right? That's not how it works with distress. That's how it works with eustress, right? You come back down after the excitement, the stressor is over. But when the stressor is your mind and the emotion of fear, then that's distress, and that's going to keep on going. As I've told you here many times, 77% of American adults experience chronic stress, meaning every day they're going into the stress response. Very few people ride a roller coaster every day, right? So eustress is almost never a problem for our health, whereas distress poses extreme problems for our health. So how do we transform the fear and just live with the excitement? It's very, very simple. When you feel that anxiety, and when you can tell that you're having thoughts about something that might go wrong at some point in the future, that's when you know that you're feeling fear as an emotion. And the only thing you need to do at that point is just check in with what is happening right now. Because remember, fear is always going to be based in the future, right? Fear is going to be, I might break my arm and then I can't work and then I won't have money and then, right? Remember, then is not now and now is not then, right? So when you're feeling that, just check in with now. Right? And you can ground yourself with your five senses. Just, what I usually invite people to do is to close your eyes and just notice the color of the light coming in through your eyelids, right? Then check in with anything you can hear, check in with anything you can smell, what you can taste, what you can touch. Okay? And then, or also, alternatively, or in addition to, just watch your breath. Just take 3 or 4 diaphragmatic breaths, right? Breathing with your abdomen, if that's comfortable for you. For some people, it's not realistic. There's problems with breathing with the diaphragm. So that if that's not an option for you, then just feel the air coming in and out of your nose or your mouth. Okay? Just, again, 4 or 5 deep breaths, just really paying attention to the breath. You're now, baby. That's it, right? Now you are back here in the present moment. And in the present moment, unless you're in a very dangerous place, in which case then it's awareness of danger in the present moment. But otherwise, 9 times out of 10, you're going to realize that there's nothing to be afraid of right now. Right? Because most of the fear comes in these very abstract and disconnected things, like how am I going to pay for this thing in 2 months, or when is my next client going to come in the door, or these kind of things that you have no control over, right? But if you engage in that fear, the fear-based thought, then the thought, emotion, sensation loop is going to carry you into a very dark and scary place, filled with stress in your body that is damaging to you, that puts you in the survival mode, that takes away your creativity, that will inhibit your ability to solve whatever problem you're grappling with. You see how that happens? It works against you. So what you can do then is, if you're sitting at your desk thinking about something like that, like what client am I going to get next month? How am I going to do this? Again, breathe a couple of breaths, really center in, focus on the sensation of the breath or any one of your senses, which is always right now, and then tell yourself, I'm sitting at my desk, I have a roof over me, I have water, I have access to water, coffee, tea, food, electricity, I have everything I need. It's heated or it's air conditioned, I'm okay. Right now, everything is okay. And that's the difference, right? Because if everything's not okay, well, then you're in a very present state of danger. But if you're acting with fear, then chances are you're thinking about what might happen. There's no need to do that, and it's not helping you to do so. So instead, just think about what is happening right here, right now. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I really do. If you have any questions about this, or if you want to nerd out on the human emotions and the nervous system and how it all works, please hit me up. I could talk about that for hours. I don't know that everybody wants to hear that, though, so I'm going to save that for a private conversation. And if you have any questions, though, or if you have any comments, or you want to tell me how great this podcast sounds, or anything at all, please reach out. Okay, you can go over to my website, artburnscoaching.com. At the bottom of every single page, there is a banner that has a clock on it. You can't miss it. Click on that. Go into my calendar program. Pick a time that works for you that's highlighted in black, I think it is. I think they're grayed out if they're unavailable for me. Pick a time that's available for me that works for you. Put your name, email address, and answer a question or two, and you're done. I'll take it from there. I will get in touch with you. I'll tell you all about how the call is going to go, and we'll have a wonderful time talking about whatever it is that you want to talk about. I would love to hear from you, okay? Thanks so much, everybody. Wish you well. I'll be back again tomorrow to talk about one of my favorite subjects, and this does get a little nerdy, so I'm warning you ahead of time. We're going to talk about the vagus nerve. Okay, the vagus nerve is this amazing magical nerve that connects our brain, our heart, and our gut, right? And it is wonderful. And I'm going to give you a little heads up that the way to stimulate your vagus nerve for all kinds of health benefits is through compassion. Isn't that wonderful? And so I'm telling you all about that tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. I wish you well. Take care.